I am so excited to be here. Doc's not here, so we had to bring in Jill.
Wait. Can we just reframe had to bring in
No,
you?
we had to because you have the same level of energy that Doc does. So it was a necessity. Otherwise, I'm sitting here like,
Okay. Okay, I like that. Okay, that was good. That was very good.
No,
Well, we missed
we
you,
should say
Doc.
well, Doc is away. Katie and Jill will play. So, so
Also that.
welcome to a crazy episode of The Flow. Jill and I are here to talk all about podcast production today. So feel free to drop your podcast production questions into the chat. Drop a Q colon in front of them, and we'll take them as we go. And then if we miss anything, we'll circle back to the end and make sure that we are we don't miss anyone's important questions. It's always fun to I love the live studio audience. It always makes me feel like I'm like in a virtual audience space. Like feel a little bit famous. I feel a little bit famous today, friends.
Katie, you're kind of a big deal. We all know it. I mean,
Yeah.
Ecamm Katie, there's only one. So
There is only one Ecamm Katie. Yes. This is true. This is true. Actually, you can't see it if you're listening, but I have I embarrassingly, it has taken me a preposterous amount of time to realize that I was missing the new Flow Riders t-shirt, and I just got it in the mail yesterday. So I'm now caught up. I have my Flow Riders shirt on. Jill's got her Ecamm swag. We're ready for all things Ecamm, all things Flow. I'm super excited. Let's jump in. So Doc usually does a countdown, so maybe we should do a countdown so that Luis can do a fun start. We can cut out all this nonsense from the beginning. Are you ready for a husa breathe it out countdown?
Definitely.
Okay. All right, everyone, breathe it out. Breathe it out. We have Tuesday vibes. Feels like a Monday, but we're gonna breathe it out. All right.
Oh, look at all
right.
nice
We have to say hi to
up.
Val. We have to say hi to Val quickly. Hi, Val. Hi, James. Hi, everyone else. All right. All right. In
wait. Are we still flowing? Okay. Sorry.
4. Aloha, everyone. I'm pretending to be Doc today, and welcome back to another episode of The Flow. We are here with the absolutely incredible Jill Roberts to talk all things podcast production and pick her brain on all of the amazing projects that she works on all the time. So it's going to be a good one. And we're going to give a bunch of examples. So buckle up. And if you're listening to this later and you're not watching the video, you're going to want to swing over to YouTube so that you can actually see all of the cool things as well. So sorry to our listening audience. We're adding an extra task for you today. But I believe in you. You can swing over here. So welcome to the show, Jill. It's been so long since we've gotten to virtually hang out. It's great.
I know. We did what was our show before, like 2 years ago? I mean, Katie, it was like Wednesdays, you and me.
Wasn't it just called the Katie and Jill show? No, yeah.
I think it was. It probably was. I don't know.
I think it was like live from the studio or live
studio. That's it.
Yeah. It was a good show. We need to pick that show back up again, Jill. We're obviously,
I don't know where we haven't,
I know. We should.
Probably should. No, but I'm really excited. Thank you for inviting me. It's always so much fun to hang out with the Ecamm fam. It's been a little while. Sometimes life gets you busy with your actual jobs and you're so busy doing all of the things that it's hard to kind of come back and say, hey, here's how I'm doing the things. And this is what's going on with me. So I've been really excited about just getting back involved with the Ecamm community. So thank you for having me. And Doc, I hope you're having fun. Thanks for not being here so I can.
I mean, to be clear, we would have had you on if Doc was here as well.
That's true.
But as you know, I feel like there's a few people who are like my co-host people, and you are one of my co-host people. So I'm excited to have you co-hosting with me today. I'm not considering you a guest. You are my special co-host for today.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super excited to pick your brain because I feel like over the last year, actually, Doc and I have been on this kind of mission of helping people better understand the big picture workflows. But one thing we haven't really talked about and kind of dived into is the production side of it. And so by production, I'm talking a little bit about studio, which I know everyone loves to geek out over the gear, but also just about thinking through kind of all of the things that go into producing different kinds of podcasts. And you have worked on a lot of different kinds of productions, podcasts and otherwise. So I'm glad for you to be here because I think sometimes we all think of like a video podcast as being like what we're doing here, but it could
Yeah.
be different than this, and it could be bigger, it could be smaller, it could be, all the different things that go into a podcast can make them all appear really differently. So I'm excited that you're here to chat about some of that today.
Yeah,
Why
me
don't
too.
we, before we jump too into it, I'm sure that there are some people here who have not yet met you. We skipped right over that. So why don't you give us a little bit of background on who you are, Ecamm Jill, and how
Sure.
you've come
Ecamm
to be
Jill.
Ecamm Jill.
So, my name is Jill. Hi, how are you? I live in Central Mass, and I started working with Ecamm kind of right before the pandemic, but especially during that time when everything switched to remote. I have a background in education. I saw a lot of like teacher content lately in the Ecamm community, which is very exciting for me, education. So yeah, no, my background is in education, teaching ESL, English as a second language, and high school. And then I transitioned into full-time marketing communications in the same school district that I taught in. And then I also do some subcontracting with some different clients, different use cases for sure. But everything all kind of comes back to video production, social media, outreach, marketing, stuff like that. So, I got my hands in a lot of things, that whole like jack of all trades, Jill of all trades. Huh? See what I did there? So yeah, that's me. I love a good challenge. And one thing I really love doing is working with different clients on, brainstorming. What are you trying to communicate? Who's your audience? And not what's your budget in terms of like, how much money can I get you to like pay me to do this stuff, but like, what is your budget on what are you working with, and how can we make whatever you're imagining, whatever you're brainstorming, whatever you want to execute happen within those means. So I really love a good challenge and trying to figure out, okay, this is what we have to work with, and how can we get the best out of it. So that's some of what I do. But yeah, I used to, way back in the old Ecamm days, I would try to hack Ecamm as much as I could. So all the features that like currently exist did not
Or
always
all Jill.
exist. No, no, they're never
Or all
done.
Jill pushing on the buttons. No, I'm just
Me
kidding.
being like,
Yeah.
Glenn, can you make this happen? If not, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
hack it."
Yeah.
But so it's really cool. Like if you're joining the community, if you're joining the software now, it's really remarkable what you can do today natively within the software itself. So whether you're live streaming or just recording and using it kind of as like preemptive video editing software, there's just so much that you can do. So obviously, besides making yourself look amazing and not look like a normal Zoom potato cam, it's like, Ecamm is remarkable. And so any way that I can help out and support the community, that's what I'm here for.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's dive in and talk about some of the projects that you've worked on. And again, I love that you've chosen ones to talk about today that are like very different from each other. So, often we do, a podcast where we're in, a studio space and we're connecting remotely as we are doing today. But
Yeah.
you've worked on projects where you've actually had to like physically build out a space where everyone is like present IRL in the same space,
IRL.
which is really, I think, different than what we've done a lot of discussion about. So, do you want to start there and talk about
Sure.
kind of the process of what it was like to actually like build out a space where you're physically welcoming guests into that space, and what some of the wins and challenges are there?
For sure. So I would say one of my longest ongoing podcasts that I produce is for our local economic development corporation in Marlboro. Go MEDC, Marlboro Economic Development Corporation. Let's go. Hey. Yes, I dabbed for all of you audio listeners. I'm a 40-year-old woman with a bob haircut, very much millennial, and I just dabbed.
Yeah,
So
owning it,
definitely hop over to
owning.
YouTube.
Mhm.
Anyway, so with the MEDC, so we've been doing that podcast. And so for us, it was really important to have in-person guests. So it's kind of a small city, and we have our host, and I'm kind of the co-host and producer. And what we wanted to do is, even during COVID, when we were all like 6 feet apart, we wanted to be able to have engaging conversations with people, and having that in person was just really important to us. We have local
Mhm.
board members, business owners, people in municipal government. So to be able to invite people into the physical space and say, okay, here's where you sit. Let me adjust your microphone and camera. And we're just having a conversation, to kind of take out the need for them to have a strong technology confidence. I won't even say background, because sometimes it's like, if we're wanting to present a show, a podcast, a video, and repurpose it for other uses. We really wanted to have high video quality content.
Yeah.
So sometimes to invite people on, even though you can get amazing quality through Ecamm and these virtual calls, we wanted to have things be in person. And honestly, that was just how our guests felt more comfortable as well. It was less
Yeah.
intimidating to just come in and have a conversation.
Yep.
So for that particular podcast, we knew that at the beginning we were producing this every other week when everything was shut down, and then we switched to like once a month because that was kind of a lot. But we were lucky enough in this. It used to be an old conference room. We had this big, huge table that took up the whole room. So we got rid of the table and we started off with whatever budget they had to get a few cameras, and then have that as our designated studio space. So over the years, it's kind of grown, and we've expanded our devices in terms of tech. You know, it used to be just on a MacBook, and then we got an iMac, and we had these potato cams, which is always what I call a webcam, and then we upgraded to some Canon M50s because we could get three without a lot of price. But for us, it was important to have everything kind of set up. The scenes, and I'll show you some of these in a little bit. The scenes didn't need to be amazingly remarkable, but we needed to be able to make our guests feel comfortable, highlight them, highlight what they were talking about and sharing about, and just facilitate a comfortable conversation that could then be repurposed into shorts and reels and clips
Mhm.
and long form content, obviously, which is the power of like being able to live stream. So for us, it's like we need to be able to I need to be able to get there a half hour before the guest, turn on all the things, make a few adjustments, and hit live. So for that podcast that we produce regularly, it's really important for us to have the space and technology and everything set up without having a lot of variables.
Yeah. I think it's really important for people to remember, and I've been seeing more and more of this actually, coming out of some of the larger podcasts and even larger podcast networks is, really kind of owning your space and having that level of control and making it an entire experience for your guests as well. So there is a really different experience of like welcoming someone into a physical space where you are face to face with them and you have someone like a Jill who is like there to make sure that everything goes well. So you are eliminating all of the nerves around, not even like you're saying, not even camera confidence, but like any
Yeah.
of the technology that could go wrong, right? Like someone who's really highly capable might still be coming in with bad internet, or
Yeah.
or just like, or they just maybe
Or
don't
no
want to, no
headphones and
headphones, or
yeah.
they don't even want to like think about it. I feel like it does make people feel sort of special and like a big deal for to have
Yeah.
someone be like, I'm going to set up your, mic for you, and this is your chair, so that all they have to focus on is the actual content, or
Exactly.
is the conversation. And so I think it, and this format, I feel like actually probably would work for a lot of people. I mean, this would
Yeah.
work whether or not you are, certainly if you're by yourself, you could, you can have a setup station and space that's a defined space, so you don't have to make a lot of kind of tweaks to it. And then,
Yeah.
if you're doing anything locally, like what Jill is doing for this particular project, then yeah, I mean, everyone's local anyway, so you're inviting people in. And again, and we've said this like a number of times, there are spaces you can rent. There are
Mhm.
spaces, there are more and more. They're becoming these like podcast like labs basically that you can rent out because it's becoming such a popular medium for people to be creating content around. So there's, free options, there's paid options, there's
Yeah.
a lot of places to be able to partner and work with people to be able to build out and set up these spaces. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's neat to think through it. I think often we forget it because technology like Ecamm makes it so easy for us to connect virtually that sometimes it might make way more sense for you to do it in a way that allows you to control the content a lot better. If the internet goes out, you can all record, you have the highest and, all of the files that you need right there, and
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about as many challenges.
Yeah. But what you said in terms of like them feeling like a little bit of a VIP situation, like we've got
Mhm.
our branded mug that we give them that they can take home. They don't have to worry about anything. I will say there have been a few times we just wrapped up episode 45. There've been a few times where
Yeah.
people have come in And maybe it was our lack of communication, but they're like, oh, wait, this is on camera too. We thought it was just a podcast. So even just clarifying the language of, we say like a
Yeah.
live video podcast so that they know
Yeah.
that you're going to be on camera, but also, we repurpose it on Spotify and everything like that else too. But people don't always know that. But yeah, people coming in and having, oh, this is where you sit. And you know what? The cameras are here, but you don't even have to talk to them. It's just whoever you're talking to, that's where you look. And it feels great and everything. So there's, I've been a guest on those in-person podcasts. And like you said, it's easier for us that have been using Ecamm and doing a lot of live streaming virtually. Ecamm is that VIP service in terms of like, you send me an email and say, hey, Jill, click this link and you'll join our show.
Mhm.
Luis is on the other end saying, okay, this is what I have set up. Is your name spelled correctly? This is what our hi, Luis, Mr. Gamer Chicken. He just popped on the screen for anyone just listening. He's so adorable. So that's like, in terms of joining shows virtually, that's what you can get with Ecamm. But I tend to do a lot of in-person production. So that's that one client, the Economic Development Corporation. And
Mhm.
then I do a lot of, this past year especially, I'm doing a lot of in-person podcasts, videos, not live streamed, but live to tape, right? So we're sitting down together and I'm interviewing students and staff in our school district. And so that's kind of a similar setup. Like I've got the microphones all set up there. I've got the Rodecaster Pro. I only have to press a couple of buttons depending on how many guests I have. And things are, it's a pretty basic setup, but then I record that to give myself a ton of short form content that I'll use
Mhm.
later. So whether I use Opus Clip, which is still just like my favorite go-to, from
Mhm.
taking long form content to creating short form content, but or just taking little clips and then putting overlays later on, to be engaging. And it's basically, I want to set up a place where people can come in, be comfortable, have conversations, get that content and get their perspective, and then be able to, use that for whatever the purposes are. So that's another show that I produce regularly. That's not really a live stream, but I do it all through Ecamm because it saves me so much time in terms of post production and trying to get all those video clips later and put it all together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important that the more people that I speak to, it is a different mindset. So a tool like Ecamm certainly was built originally as a live streaming tool, and so the the structure of it and how you kind of build out and work through your show, regardless of what it is, regardless of
Yeah.
whether it's a presentation or a podcast or any kind of content, you're still having to think in that kind of live to tape
Mhm.
mentality where you're basically you're producing it and you're like adding in all of those visual elements and sound effects and everything that you would want in the finished video. You're adding those as you go, and so that does
Mhm.
save you ideally a ton of time on the post production side of it. And certainly for something like a podcast where the content is the not the content, but the structure of the show is going to be the same week after week
Right.
or month or whatever
Yep.
your frequency is of it. And so really all you're changing out is actually the content,
The
like the
details.
content itself, the
Yep.
details. Maybe it's a guest or or a co-host, so you're changing like the names below you or what have you. But so a tool like Ecamm would make that very, very easy then for you to just save that as a profile, and then you're able to just switch into that when you're ready to record or to stream your show, and you're good to go. And so,
Right.
I think it I think if people can get into the mindset of thinking through it that way and setting everything up and structuring it that way, you will be able to do more and collect more content. And then there are so many tools, as you just said, that are out there that will help you pare that down and use that in all the different ways. So like
Repurpose
obviously,
that. Yeah.
you can use it as a podcast, you can grab just the audio out of it, you can use tools like Opus to be able to grab all the little clips for social. There's, all different things you can do if you're really clever about how you're capturing that content initially. So, yeah, I
It's
think
that
it's important for people
pre-planning.
to remember. And our
Yeah.
fans know it, but
Yeah.
but yeah.
I will say when I first downloaded Ecamm, I mean, I did a Google search on how to use my DSLR as a webcam. Like that was the
Yeah.
Google search because I had all of these, Canon 80Ds that I was using for photography and for videography for my different projects. And I was like, I want to look this good when I'm live streaming.
Yeah.
And one of the first use cases I had was I was live streaming on Rosetta Stone's mobile app. So I had this
Yeah.
huge pressure of sounding and looking great and also being
Yeah.
able to make eye contact and listen to the producer in my head tell me what to say. I mean, it was a ton of pressure. But in that case, when I first downloaded Ecamm, I remember being like, wait, what's a scene? How do I use scenes versus overlays? Like, should I have a gazillion overlays or should I have scenes? And like, I mean, what's funny is like I have video production background, but it still took me a little while to figure out how can I plan out physically in the
Mhm.
software what I want to see in the end. So you have
Yeah.
to really anticipate like, okay, what might I want to see? So even like what do you call it? Like storyboards, right? When you're like
Mhm.
about to when you're going to record a video. I remember taking TV production class in Marlboro High School. Go Keith Heckman. All right. I dabbed again for all of our audio listeners. That's the second dab of the show. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Um but so like storyboards, you're like, okay, what do I really want to show in this first scene? And then where am I going to go? And so giving yourself, that's how I use scenes now. I'm giving myself, okay, I want all of the different options. So actually this a good time for me to kind of show you what I do with
Yeah, yeah, let's
this
let's go
economic
over. Louise
development?
can help us set up our scene.
Set up my scene. So basically, I'm going to show
Ta-da!
you guys some examples from this podcast that I do consistently. Now, I shouldn't prep things. I should just like how you're not. Oh no, my camera is mad at me. Katie, can you take
Oh,
over for a second while I
no.
go to something else?
Yeah, Louise, can you put me full screen? There we go. Oh, we're almost there. There we go.
Ah, take me away. Of course.
Take me away. I'm just gonna look through the comments while you're doing that.
Okay.
So we have the whole fam is hanging out. Thanks for being here today, everyone. Lots of people complimenting your hair, Jill. So props
Oh,
on that.
thank
Feel good
you.
about your loving the new haircut. Mark wants to know while you're working in the background there, on how you incorporate music into your production. So like what are the best practices and pitfalls surrounding incorporating music?
Oh. So music like as in music that I'm singing or like music in the background. So I don't actually use a lot of music. I can't believe my camera's like so mad at me, guys. I so apologize. So I tend to do a lot of like royalty free music in terms of like intros and outros so that I don't get any type of dings or anything.
Yep.
But I used to do like live stream concerts during COVID, but I haven't gone back to that because it wasn't risk putting my channel. I feel like you guys just did a show about this. Were you guys talking about this lately?
Yeah, we did an episode where we were talking about kind of the legal side of podcasting or of video production, and I do think that like it and this is actually your answer is like a great answer and one that I think is really important for us to cover specific to this topic of podcast production is that many times we overthink it to death. I know I overthink it to death. So because the
Mm,
software allows us to do all of these different things, right? So like with Ecamm, you can load up tons of music, you can play YouTube clips, you can do just about anything. But that
yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that you should or that you need to. So Jill's answer is actually great and I love this about you, Jill, is that you really I think are pretty intentional about what is the content that I'm trying to share for
Mhm.
who, like who is the audience, and so what are the elements that I need to bring this content to life in video and in video podcast format, right? So it's I think I think that's really important to remember is that like maybe for the podcast that Jill's working on, music isn't actually all that important because it's really much more focused on, the conversation and the facial cues back and forth between, each other and maybe it's like a tiny bit of, background kind of, royalty free music or what have you that's playing softly
Just
in the
like
background, but that's not
fill the
really
space. Yeah.
the main yeah, it's not really worth the time or the risk of doing like a ton of work to find like, you don't really need like a theme song, you don't really need like all the same kind of stuff for that particular show. So,
I mean, should we have a theme song? Obviously. but is it necessary? Not for what I'm doing. All right, I'm just plugging in a camera again. So give me a second. But actually, while I let my camera like chill out for a second, I can show you those overlays because you can still hear me. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Luis, if you go back to the full screen, Jill can put on
I can
her
I can go through these.
overlays. All
And
right,
then
there we
Katie,
go.
you can just be my little
Oh, yeah.
my little Vanna White in the corner. All right. So
Woo!
restarting back to the idea of, working with a corporation on producing their podcast. I knew that I wanted to start off each show with a 1-minute countdown just to kind of let everything out there. I feel like I usually stream through restreams. So there's different delays in terms of latency to YouTube and to Facebook and to LinkedIn.
Mhm,
So I like to have that 1-minute countdown. And so I reuse this little intro slide every week and I just customize it for our different guests. It's basic, it's simple. It takes me like a minute to update with the
mhm,
different people that are our guests and names and stuff like that. And then, there's your basic opening scene of our host and then like the co-host, which if you were to zoom in, this is a thing that I should have checked. I ate blueberries right before we live streamed this. If you were to zoom in real quick, you don't, but it's horrifying. Anyways, I just thought I'd point that out for anyone. You can prep all you want, but just check your teeth before you go live stream because there's definitely a blueberry in my front tooth. Anyway, so these things though, so this scene right here is never going to change. I've got my host, our co-host, we've got our names on the bottom. So this is stuff that I created once. And on the bottom, there is like a scrolling ticker of, hey, we're live streaming. Here's how you can contact us. So again, it's for the brand. It's on brand in terms of our coloring, our backgrounds and everything like that. You make it once and you just keep reusing it. And then you set up another scene where the guest is really the highlighted person. And then we're over there in the corner. I always create a lot of scenes where I don't need to be on camera because I am setting up if they mention a website that suddenly I want to pull in, I can totally do that. I use preview mode in Ecamm and then I jump over to pull in the website on the second screen and pull that up. So I like to be able to, as the co-host, be behind the scenes for all those spontaneous things that might come up, which
yeah.
really, 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 those are the things that impress the audience, honestly, that impress the host, not the host, the guest, because they're like, oh man, I just mentioned that and you pulled a picture from our Facebook page. I'm like, yeah, because I can do that in Ecamm. You can't just do that in any other place really. But anyway, so I'm setting up these scenes. All I have to do before the guest walks in is just switch out names. And then I've just started doing this because we have meetings before our guest comes in. We have some pre-planned questions, right? So
Mhm,
what we used to do is just like have them on a little whiteboard in the office that we can refer to. And then I was
mhm,
like, well, what if someone just jumps into the middle of our podcast? They need context to know what it is that we're talking about. So I set up in overlays and actually I have it showed in all scenes and I have it in a position that could be popped onto any of our scenes so that if we're talking, if our guest is answering a specific question, our audience, no matter when they jump in, has some context to know what they're talking about. I
mhm.
don't always use this because sometimes, we get talking about other things, but anytime I can do that, I like to do that, just again to give context for people that might be jumping in. And then I always create a scene that's going to have our host, our guest, and then I have pictures that I know will be relevant to the conversation. Usually I ask our guests to send in some if they have any, but if they don't, I'm creeping on their social media beforehand. I'm going through their LinkedIn if it's kind of like a high stakes. This is Sartorius, which is like a huge life science company. So it's kind of a big deal. So making the show more dynamic by not just having it be talking heads, but showing pictures and videos where we can. So again, these are all just I've got I think 8 scenes. So I got 2 more, being able to show their website. And this website was really awesome because they had like a video playing in their website, so it felt even fancier. I like switched to this scene. I was like, oh my gosh, I look like such a professional because their website looks so awesome.
Yeah.
And then finally kind of planning this behind the scenes, final scene. So I found that there were a few times at the end of our show where if I just fade to black, it was actually cutting out some of that content on those different platforms. So like YouTube would still
Okay.
be, you'd get our last words, but Facebook would cut off, that latency thing.
Mm.
So, anyways, having a final scene that's just playing some music in the background. I know I love the way Ken and Glenn do this with their show where, they've got like behind the scene, it's just them popping on people's questions all over the screen, which I really love.
Yeah.
But I prep our guests and say, okay, now we're at a scene. There's a webcam right above my head. Wave to the webcam. Our microphones are muted. We're just going to stay live for another 60 seconds and kind of showing them behind the scenes. Yes, those are ring lights. Don't judge me. They work for our space. It doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, so that it's like all of these things I set up kind of once. And I was telling Katie yesterday, it maybe takes a half hour before we go live to customize these for our guests. And again, that's really kind of I think what's kept me employed there because the guests are like, "Wow, that's so cool that you could just bring these in. That was so seamless." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's totally seamless. It's not even any work at all." But it's not a ton of work once you know how to use the software.
Yeah. And what's really cool here, and what I think is worth really calling out to everyone, is that none of this is all that overproduced. Like, it's
Mm,
pretty simple. It has all of the elements that are necessary, right? So it's got like the logo, it has everyone's kind of names and titles. You can easily see like how to interact if you're watching it, but obviously the conversation and the audio is still applicable for it to be able to carry over into the podcast players. Jill's back. Um so it's it's not overproduced or overdone, so there's also not a lot of pain points for things to go horrifically wrong. Like, it's
yeah.
clean, it's nice, so you're able to just sort of reuse that in a number of different ways, which I think is great and is really important for people to remember, is that it you don't have to do the most because you have the most, like, which
Yeah.
I'm guilty of, but I think it's important to, like, really
I mean,
think
if
through, like, what needs to be on screen and what is actually helping the people on the other side who are consuming the content.
and if you're wanting to create content consistently, like, in my little home office here, besides my camera overheating, um, you want you'll create more content if you have things set up.
Yeah.
So you want it to be easy. So at the MEDC, it's like I know the first of every month I'm going to be doing this show, but then also we like to jump on camera last minute, like, hey, let's talk about this new project that's happening downtown, and we can just sit on our chairs and quickly jump on live. So like if you're wanting to create more content, if you're wanting to push yourself to stay relevant and to just produce more, you want to have things set up so that you can just go back to it and reuse it and tweak a couple of things. And the same goes with, my other podcast with the schools. It's like there's a space set up. It's not the most beautiful. There's not a gazillion overlays, but there doesn't need to be. It's about capturing those sound bites and sharing with the community what's going on. And so making it as easy as possible. So, but going back to, instead of thinking I'm going to get a bunch of content and then fix it, produce it, edit it later. You can take, even just if you want to start from scratch, you could take an hour, maybe not even that much, especially with all the free resources and scenes that everybody shares. There's so much that you can put together preemptively. You can plan for an hour and then have your scenes set up and reuse them and reuse them. So it is a little backwards thinking, like, what might I want to show?
Mhm.
Like even with this, I kind of threw a wrench in here because like my camera goes out, then it's like, okay, well, what backup scenes do we need to have in case that happens so that we can quickly say, Jill's out, Katie needs to be full screen. And it's not easy to do, and it's not easy to plan, and you hardly ever need to do that, but it does obviously happen. You know what? You're welcome for providing this opportunity. Really.
A learning opportunity. This is
Right?
actually a
You're
great question
welcome.
coming in from Tora. So Tora asks, I love it. Everyone's like, this might be a dumb question. It's never a dumb question.
Never a dumb question.
But when setting up and producing podcasts like this, does the client have to have their own Ecamm account, or is the producer the person who kind of keeps the Ecamm account? I know what I would answer, but I know you do a lot of different projects. So how do you how do you rock it? How do you own it?
Oh,
Do you
yeah. No,
expect
the
them to have
clients
it?
don't Clients
Yeah.
don't need to have anything. All we
Yeah.
do, I mean, again, most of the stuff that I'm working on is in-person production, but when I've done
Yep.
virtual productions, it's great. It's just like, "Hey, click on this link and it will tell you, to write your name, and it will prompt you to select your camera and your microphone, and there you go." So whoever's just producing, whoever's going live, that's the person that would need the account. And
Mhm.
because I have multiple computers, like I have way too many computers. It's embarrassing. Um, Not like that's not a humble brag. That's like I like
I thought it
maxed
was a big
that
deal.
one out and I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
handle. I need more RAM. I'm just gonna get a new computer. I
Yeah.
shouldn't be saying things I'm saying. But anyways, but I have that same I can log into all of those computers under my account. So,
Yeah.
if I'm going from this company to that or this laptop to that iMac or whatever, it's that same profile, it's that same account.
Yeah, and you can the cool thing too about it is once you get to the level of like of where Jill is and you have, projects that you're working on, different clients, you can also like bring them even virtually into Ecamm and walk them through what the show
Absolutely.
will look like because
Yep.
you've already built all that out in Ecamm. So like at any point, you could take them through and say like, okay, and then we're going to shift over here. So you're going to be looking at this camera. Like it allows you the opportunity to be able to, I mean, really you need to be thinking about this as if you are your own television station or
Yeah.
television network. So go back in time with us. Let's all go back to the 90s. But yeah, I mean that's really what you're capable of doing these days
Yeah.
is you are the one that is, behind the scenes and working on all the content, and either you are also the person on screen as well like we are in this case, or you're like Luis and you're staying behind the scenes and running the entire show. So
Yeah.
there's all of that is possible, but again the important part is really planning it out, thinking about what you might need, as Jill was saying, and thinking about also like the space. So like again,
Mhm.
as you were saying earlier, I think it's having a defined space, if you can manage it, is super important.
Mhm.
Knowing how to like take down your space and move it somewhere else if that's what you
Yeah.
need, or like maybe you're like Jill and you have a couple different computers, so you're like, okay, this one always stays here, but
Yeah.
I can log into this other computer and my, all of my Ecamm files are saved, on Dropbox or someplace where I can access them virtually. All of these things are worthwhile considerations to be thinking of. I mean, honestly, regardless of whether you're podcasting or live streaming or whatever
Yeah.
video
And
production you're doing.
if you're wanting to like be a producer, if you're wanting to like talk about a pitch deck, I've done this plenty of times where I've been like, "Oh, I'd love to produce your hybrid event." Although hybrid events are kind of a nightmare, but let's just pretend that I'm still really into that and want to like make all the money. I don't.
Yeah.
The hybrid events just anyways. But to be able to say, "Yeah, you know what? Let's talk about this. I've got like a 20-minute presentation." And then you send them the Ecamm link and then they get to see this.
Yeah.
And then you're showing them, "Oh, this is where I would have you. Let me show you this scene. Oh, you like that picture? Oh, this isn't your updated logo. Hold on, let me just get your logo." You drop it on there. I mean, once you get familiar enough with the software, like you're able to do this on the fly, but obviously you don't do things on the fly. I would say a great person that's done this is Stephanie Garcia. She's so great
Mhm.
at like she'll create scenes where like let's say instead of me being here, it'll be like the profile or the silhouette of the
Mhm.
clients and stuff like that.
Yep.
So you can use Ecamm as a pitch deck as well to show people, no, this is what I can produce for you, and this is how seamless I can make it.
Yeah.
But it's like it's thinking ahead on what are all the possible scenes that I might want to show. How can I make this easy so that all I'm doing is clicking that scene, and then you could eventually get a stream. There's so many different ways to make it easier, but from the very basic, thinking of the different things that you might want to show, um, and all the different variables and all the different bells and whistles that you can add on top of it depending on
Mhm.
your client's needs.
Yeah, and I love this comment. It says, "I learned the importance of having a be right back video that you can play should something happen." I'm embarrassed to
Oh
say
yeah.
that like every time that something happens, I'm like, that would be a good thing to have, and yet I still do not have that in my arsenal. So even if it's just like again going back to kind of like music, it could be a video, it could be it could just be a graphic that you're playing like some music behind or what have you, but the ability to to kind of just keep people there while you quickly move behind the scenes is super important, because that will
Yeah,
help you stay calm as well. There's nothing worse than kind of, I mean,
for
Jill
sure.
is a professional, so she's fine. But most people would be like, "Oh no, like they can see that everything is broken. I need to." The panic that kind
Yeah.
of rises in the background is
For
not so
those
good.
for those high stakes, live streams, so, like, graduation ceremonies, for example, that's something that's,
Mhm.
like, I know hundreds of people are gonna watch. When the world was shut down and I was live streaming hockey games, I knew that, the only way that people could see their kids playing hockey was through this link, and so I would have overlays, that would, if, like, this one particular rink we would go to was just the worst reception, it didn't matter what I brought, it was just, like, it was sketchy. So I would have overlays that would remind people every once in a while that says, "Should we lose our live stream, a video will be shared shortly." Like, I would constantly push that out once in a while,
Oh, that's smart.
just to say, because people would be like, "Wait a second, this is glitching, this is slowing down." It's like, yeah, we know there's certain things that are out of our control. But I do have scenes for those high stakes, live streams that are like, "Should we lose connection?" Or like whatever, or if a camera's gone out, there's definitely options. So I highly recommend that, because if it could happen, it's gonna happen at some point, especially when you're cranking out
True.
so much content. It's just all the variables. Something's gonna happen. Oh,
Yeah,
I see
it
so
is.
many familiar people here in the comments. Sorry, I
It's
just like
true.
pulled that
No,
up.
you're all good. This is a good question too on bidding for projects. Do you ever have to get into bidding projects? If you're working in education and kind of a lot of governmenty kind of stuff. So how does
Yeah.
it work for trying to get clients and get into the world of production?
So, yeah, I see that from Rich. Hi, Rich. How are you? So with if it's funny, I would love to like pull more people into what I'm doing so that I could bid for more jobs and grow the team, because I'm just limited with being like, oh, one more time, Dab, with being a one man show. Um, but so I don't have to do as much bidding for jobs now because I'm kind of at my limit in terms of reaching out. But I will say, when I'm hosting, even just working with Sartorius last week as a guest, they were like, "Oh, do you do subcontracting? Because it would be great to have something like this in our own headquarters." And I'm like, "Yep, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Here's my card." Now I don't know if I'm ever going to do that, but for sure, I've definitely bid for some jobs to do more so a couple years ago, where I would do exactly this and I'd invite them to come on and show. But yeah, once you're, for me, I'm in that municipal government, school government. So there's like circles where people will say, "Oh, I saw that you did that video. Can you do
Yeah.
something similar for the Metro West campaign?" and stuff like that. So by creating content and me sharing that content on LinkedIn, on my personal Facebook, who says it all the time? Is it Luria or Stephanie? Top of mind, tip of tongue. It's like
Mhm.
sharing out that content that you're doing. People are like, "Oh, I would love that for what we're doing." And then that leads to conversations. And then you can show them personalized with their colors, right? You can change all these things and make it all branded for them. That's a huge way, a huge sales pitch. But being known, if you're an obnoxious, outgoing person like me, it's not too hard to put yourself out there. But yeah, there's certain guidelines in terms of different fields of work where you have to be registered to bid for certain jobs. So that's a totally different process as well. I think Ivan Barra can talk to that because he's done a lot of work like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting, and I mean, again, like, uh, we're now seeing more and more and more people moving into particularly into the podcasting space, and often we talk, entirely about kind of like, either like side hustle or hobby podcasts or like podcasts
Mhm.
that you're doing alongside something else. But they're like large companies also are looking to, to reach more people through this medium. And I mean, and medium and small size companies as well. So there's certainly potential for someone who can, get really good at this.
Yeah.
The work that you do is visual. So it's, easily for able to build kind of a portfolio or, examples of your work. And there are lots of people who have no idea how to do this. For these people, it feels big and overwhelming and too much.
Yeah.
So it's a really good opportunity if you can be smart about it. There are people are looking to grow, to grow their businesses and to get in front of more people, and
Yeah,
they have the expertise to speak to the content, but they have no idea how to structure or set up a podcast or to,
absolutely.
bring
And
on
some
video
people
or to do this.
don't wanna be bothered with that.
Mhm.
There was one client that I worked with out in Texas, and I knew him previously, and I ran into him at Social Media Marketing World, and we just reconnected, and then I noticed that he was interviewed a lot on the actual news, like, he owns a big deal company,
Yeah,
um, big deal client, and I was
yeah,
like, how I wanted to let him know that I could easily help him just look, cleaner,
yeah,
and look more professional. Not that he didn't look, I mean, there's all this like language, and lean into Chat GPT if you need to in terms of saying some of these things. But I reached out to him and said, if you ever want to upgrade your home production studio, let me know. Whether it's me or somebody else, I can help you just elevate your sound and your visuals. And so
yeah,
that became a nice little side job that I did. I flew out to Texas twice and did his home studio office. And so, I mean, if that's something that you want to get into and producing in person, sometimes it's just like this guest that came in last week, maybe they want to be able to create the same type of podcast, and they just need somebody like me to say, hey, you know what, let me show me your spaces. Okay, you could use this space, buy these
yeah,
cameras. Those are all services that you can charge for, and that then you're like solving these people's pain point, right? You want to solve
yeah,
people's problems, and then be known as the person that can just come in and set things up for them and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, there's lots of possibilities in terms of just being that person that is trusted, that's experienced, that's flexible, and easy to work with, and can show you their content and what they're producing.
yeah. There's some great questions coming in. Tora asks, is it more effective to handle production on an a la carte basis for each job or as part of a package contract deal?
Wait, let me read that again. Is it more effective
Is
to
it
handle
more effective?
production?
Yeah.
I would say usually a package contract deal. I mean, there's different there's it's a, that's a it can be so broad in terms of like
Mhm.
the stuff that I've done. So some people will be like, "Hey, can you just come in and tell me what to do?" And I could be like, "I can do some consulting and then get us, here's this amount of money and then I get this
Yeah.
much from it or whatever." And or you can so for me, I knew after doing that studio builds were not necessarily my thing, because I don't want to be the tech expert to constantly be like, IT, this
Yeah.
camera won't work, or that stuff can be a little bit tedious. But I don't know, there's just so many options in terms of like what you get called on and what people are looking for. So
Yeah.
I mean, with my regular client, the MEDC, I get paid as a subcontractor. So that's something that I go in, once a week or a few times a
Yeah.
month. I go in and I get like an hourly rate. So for me, that makes sense for that particular client. But to be their go-to like social media person would then be a different stipend, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's worth looking at. I know Stephanie off the top of my head has a really good we'll drop this into the description to the show notes later, but she's got a really good like rate calculator
Yeah, she
for
did.
production. And so be thinking through like what are the things that you A want to do and B, have a skill set and a background in, you can literally just rate those out. And so then as you're talking to, to different potential clients, you can say like, you know, here's my rate for card for these different things,
Hmm.
or you can bundle them together and then kind of make a package or a proposal
Yeah.
that way. So there's understanding like what the value is for each of those individual tasks is likely the best place to start for being able to get into this space and understand like what's possible, because it it can be difficult. As you said, like you might want to definitely be in the like the production space, but not doing, social media or not doing like there's
Right.
so many different aspects that go within that can come alongside some of these things that it's good to know
Yeah.
like where your lines are. like
Yeah.
like I'm gonna do this, but I'm never gonna do this. Or like as you said, like, maybe setting up studios isn't your thing because it's not
The
worth the
upkeep.
yeah, the upkeep or the time and,
Mhm.
raises too many questions. It's not where you wanna be playing, so it's important to
Yeah.
understand all that going into it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do we miss any slides? I can't as usual, I'm always like, "Wow, an hour gone." Is there
I
is there
know.
anything we didn't cover? We talked through, both different. I did want to, did you have any examples did you bring with you on what the like student interview show
You know what?
looks like?
I'll
It's very
drop that
different.
in
Okay.
the YouTubes. I'll drop that in the YouTubes.
Into
So
the
yeah,
YouTubes,
into
the
the
show notes.
YouTubes. But yeah, that main goal of that, I mean, so I'm employed by that school district, so it's kind of just like, oh, this is part of my job, and I'm wanting to use this skill set,
Yeah.
to, for our students and for our school. But a big part of that is giving students and teachers a space to be highlighted and then create all this short form content on Instagram, which the kids just go crazy for it. They just love those little reels. They just love seeing themselves on there. But yeah, capturing long form content, like that's huge in terms of podcasts. I think some people will do their own podcasts. I mean, think about it. All these people I follow on TikTok, all this content that I'm consuming on TikTok are these 1 minute or 5 minute clips from a much longer conversation. And it's funny, sometimes I won't ever listen to their whole podcast. I won't ever even go to their YouTube channel, but it's these short clips from these long interviews that just really are super engaging to me or super shareable. So a lot of people will do long form content for the sole purpose of having that short form content. And I mean, that's definitely where I fall personally in terms of like my passion projects.
Yeah.
But professionally, both happen. But you won't get
Yeah.
that short form content unless you have those long conversations. And that's like the beauty of podcasts, because you get space and time, and you
Yeah.
don't
Yep.
always, even if you have a plan, you don't always know what's going to happen. Like, speaking as a tenured teacher, I create my lesson plan. I know what I need to go over in that, 47 minutes with those kids. And I might be teaching that same course 3 times in the same day, but each period is different because
Yep.
each group of kids is different. I've got that chatty group. I've got that group that just stares at me and I'm like, okay, great. So let me fill in some space. Like, you don't know. So podcasts, it's so important to be able to facilitate conversations and see where things go. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's super powerful because you don't know where it's going to end up.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. And if you enjoyed this conversation, literally in 4 minutes from now, we are hosting a workshop alongside Daniel, who is also another incredible producer, to dive like into the technical details of production and
Yeah.
video production. So definitely swing over and join us. I know that Paul can drop the link for that into the chat here if you're hanging out with us live. But I always appreciate chatting with you because you're so like
Hmm.
you make it feel so doable and approachable. So I hope that everyone else felt that way as well. But definitely follow Jill. Find her in the community. Where else? Where else you hanging out these days, Jill?
It's funny. I feel like my own personal YouTube page, the YouTubes. I'm not cranking out a lot of content there because I'm producing so much for the clients. I mean,
Yeah.
again, a little humble brag. Just kidding. I'm a single mom. I need to make money and pay bills. But no, I'll drop it in the YouTube's
Sure.
description. Ways to get
Perfect.
in touch with me if you guys are interested in continuing the conversation. And I hope to get more involved. And wait, Creator Camp. If you're coming to Creator Camp,
You will
definitely
see
see you
Jill at
there.
Creator Camp. Well, thank you so much. Thanks all the Flow Riders for hanging out with us in the live chat. We always appreciate that. If you love the show, you can find it every week. We release a new episode, flow.ecamm.com. We're available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all of the places where the podcast getting is good, as Doc says. I'm going to pretend to be Doc today. And this show, like every other, is hosted and sponsored by our friends over at Captivate. They're just an absolutely incredible podcast host. So if you're looking to get into this space, be it for your own podcast or one that you are producing, we highly recommend Captivate. You can find them over captivate.fm. And from all of us here at The Flow to all of you, thanks for hanging out with us. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.